panelist. Namaste. Namaste. I'm back with a very interesting session. And today we're going to talk in this hour about some of the portrayals of feminism, portrayals of caste and Dalit, and some of those manifestations that come up in academia, media about Hinduism. And we want to sort of bring our perspective and the reality as you know, our panelists have researched. We today have Mr. and Mrs. D.K. Hari, D.K. Hariji and Hema Hariji. Namaste. I'm hoping we are able to spotlight you. I will right away. And I also want to spotlight Aldrine Deepak ji. Aldrine Deepak ji, namaste. He is also our panelist, and I'm looking to see if Madhu Kishwar ji is here because she is also going to speak today. But I will go ahead and introduce Sri D.K. Hariji and Hema Hariji. I am a student, first of all, so you are my guru, so, you know, namaste and pranams to you. I have been just floored with the kind of work that you have done in so many years, almost 2 decades and over. You have been researching the Indic civilization from the Indic lens and Bharat. You know, I have just learned so much with you on your channel, Bharat Gyan, as well as through some of the courses that you run on Hindu University of America. And these are the most fun courses that I've ever attended in my whole entire life. So first of all, let me say that. And today, you know, I wanted to give you the floor to talk about the you know, some of the issues that we face on how feminism is portrayed, how women's roles and women's you know, problems are portrayed from the you know, Western media or the academia. And when you related some of the issues and how coloniality is linked to how things changed in India and what was existent before that, I think those are like very important perspectives. And I want to give the floor to you right away so that we can start the session. You know, and I don't know if you have slides to share.
Yes, please. Yes,
you do, right?
Slides to share. That's right.
So I will give you rights. I think I would like Rajiv to sort of help me with that. To give screen share rights. All participants have the rights.
Yes, we got it.
We've got it.
You got it. You got it right. Okay,
excellent.
Fine. First of all, we'd like to thank Richa Gautamji, our good friend, for introducing us to this audience and inviting us to be part of this session. Thank you so much. And as you rightly said, in the field of Indian civilization studies, we both, husband and wife, have been working on this for well over 2 decades, as you rightly said, through our effort called Bharat Gyan. It is to appreciate and relish this knowledge of the civilization as a whole, and not just look at history or aspects, but overall. So that's why we call it Bharat Gyan. Gyan, knowledge, the way we say it in anglicized form, Bharat, the land which relishes knowledge. All this you can see, as she said, you can see more in our website, but we'll get on to the subject of the day. It is very important. Stree Shakti. The women, Stree, have their own innate Shakti. So it's, and what the layers of it in the given time of this program, we'll try to bring out some of these aspects. Screen is, you can see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
That's good. Excellent. So this is an important aspect. And the first aspect in this particular narrative of Stree Shakti is, when you look at a Western idea, you always say, behind every successful man, there is a woman. And this is an offset statement. And this is the fundamental of the thought process. The very idea, thought is from this. That means the woman is behind and the man is in the front. That's a fundamental issue. That means what? It also implies one more very key thing. If you cannot pause to think for a moment there, that means man is the achiever and women has to support from behind in a faceless manner. And any achievement, even if a woman does, has to go to the credit of the man. Because even up to 100 years back, in West Europe or other parts of the world, except India and Southeast Asia, if a woman authors a book or comes up with an invention or discovery, it is attributed to either her father, husband, brother, or son. She cannot take credit. That was how it was. So that is why this concept of behind every successful man, there's a woman, has come down to us. See, that's the basis of it. Whereas, if you look at the Indian thought, the Dharmic thought, what is it? The Hindu civilization thought. What is it? It is Ardhanari. It is not behind. There's no behind here. And they are together. Look at that. So equal, it's beyond equal. See, again, we're going to discuss for next few minutes about equality. Is it really equal? And we're going to look at a word called where you give rights to women. No, we'll discuss about those two as we go along. So the first idea is we have to move from this mold, from the mindset of saying behind every successful man there's a woman, to the concept of Ardhanari, Ardhangini. Look at it's a shift. It's a shift in the mind. And from there on, everything else. That is why.
And the other beautiful word that this civilization has held for a woman is a Sahadharmini. We have never called her Samadharmini. While we have called our society a Samaj, where the Sama denotes a balance. Sama does not necessarily always indicate equal. Even when things are equal, it is meant to lead to a state of balance, not comparison. Unfortunately, today the word equal has created a mindset of comparing, whereas the idea of equal has always been that it should balance. And so automatically when you talk about balance, it means there are two sides, because only then you need to balance. So equal is needed so that you can balance both the sides, and that is when you have a Samaj. But even then, we have never called the woman as a Samadharmini. She has been called a Sahadharmini. And therein lies the beauty, where the word Saha denotes togetherness, complementary in nature. That is why you have a brother or a sister who has come from the same womb, who has shared the same womb with whom you have shared the same womb of the mother, is a Sahodara or a Sahodari. So because we don't use these words, we have forgotten these ideas itself. We don't refer to the word wife as a Sahadharmini or a Sahadharmin, and therefore we normally use the very easily flowing words Pati, Patni, which also have a very beautiful inner meaning. But these words also, if we start practicing, we will understand that it was meant to be a complementary relationship.
And let's see what is the difference between the Saha and Sama in the next few slides.
And this idea, we'll just see the Saha Sama aspect a little more in detail.
So this is because we introduced an idea called Saha Sama. We'll see that little bit here, and then we'll get on to the next point.
So the idea is that there are going to be differences, different gaps, and you fill each other's gaps. It is never that you're both equal and you match perfectly. It is when you match the gaps that you're perfect. And it is when you match the gaps that you create a nest. If you're just equal, you're just creating gaps, and you're creating a society riddled with gaps as well, even between one unit, one family unit to another. Every family unit, which is where the caste system had a beautiful role to play, the Varna Jati Ashrama.
Varna Jati system.
Varna Jati Ashrama system of Bharat had a beautiful role to play to fill in the gaps in society. And the Saha idea of the woman, the Sahadharmin, Sahadharmini, gave in a complementary feel within the family. So that was how it was. And this aspect was also there in the idea of divinities, where you see even the divinities have been paired. It's not just Shiva as Ardhanari. Look at the pairs of divinities. You have Brahma, who is charged with, who is, he has the function actually of creating and expanding the universe. So Brahma, the mind and the universe, the consciousness, everything is Brahma.
But here the word Brahma, we should understand the etymology. The word Brah means in Brahma to grow, expand. That's why you call Mumbai Brihan Mumbai, the big one, the growing big Mumbai. Brihat Ishwar, the big one, the big Ishwar. Brihat. So the word Brah there stands for growth. So expanding universe. That's what the root means. So to expand, what do you need? Of the universe, expanding everything, you need the knowledge to expand. So that's why they are complement each other.
And Saras means a reservoir. So how can you have a space without medium? So the attribute of the performer, the strength of the performer comes from his consort Saraswati. So she is the one who has the ability to hold. See, she is the reservoir. So a space without the ability to hold is meaningless. So Brahma has to go with Saraswati. And look at this, Vishnu as a preserver, he is one who pervades and permeates to the lowest and pervades to the largest. So which is why he is Vishnu, Vis. And this Vis, for him to permeate and pervade, he needs Lakshmi, who sets the goal, Lakshya. So look at the words themselves. If you start looking at them and understanding the meanings, no word is without a meaning. And nothing has been conceptualized and depicted without a very deep inner meaning, and which holds good across layers. So Vishnu and Lakshmi are beautifully paired, therefore, together. Likewise, Shiva, who is normally called a destroyer, but he is actually a regenerator, because the word Shiva itself means Mangalam. How can Mangalam be a destroyer?
Mangalam means auspicious in English.
So Mangalam is auspiciousness. So to regenerate in cycles, which is a fundamental Hindu ethos of cyclical in nature. Everything is cyclical. So the cycle of cycles of creation and dissolution also need regeneration. And that is where you have Shiva going with Shakti, and you see that beautifully depicted in the Ardhanari. And this aspect of cycles.
Join the meeting.
And this aspect of cycles, if you see, is also beautifully shown here as in the word parinama. While Western view of evolution is just one-sided,
It's linear.
The Hindu view is parinama, which means a cause and effect cycle. So a cause and then creates an effect, which becomes the cause, and this goes in a cyclical manner.
Again, this is a mindset change. Each aspect you're talking about is a paradigm shift in the mind, in the very thought process. Because to understand Stree Shakti, we must be willing to shed the baggage of the coloniality, Western mindset, which has pervaded for the last 200, 300 years, unfortunately, and actually stamped its foot on femininity there. We'll see that. And all this leads to look at this. So when you said Saha Sama, why are the Western women fighting for equality? Because they were suppressed. There was suppression. So you fight for that. Whereas when you have harmony, you are complementing. But through time, this degenerates to suppression. Then you fight for equality because there's resurgence. Then women fight all over. They say we also can do it. So this is a cyclical process. And we realize this is a cyclical process through time, through geography, through various reasons. And we see the harmony in it, as she showed you the hand of the nest egg. Like that, you see the harmony very clearly there. And that is why we bring out. So whenever people ask us in women's conference, if they ask us, are you for equality? We say no. That opens up their minds. What? You're not for equality? No, we said we are for complementary, the next level. So today you are all speaking about equality, but 20 years later, you all come to a concept called complementary. We're already there.
So we have to start speaking about gender complementary rather than fight for gender equality. If you start focusing on gender complementary, you will leapfrog faster than go slowly into.
And No, and look at this. We often use the word women's empowerment. We both are loath to the word empowerment. Absolutely loath to it. Do you know why? Because when you say empowerment, what does it mean? Somebody is more powerful than the women, and that somebody has to empower the women to be powerful. That means willy-nilly women are not powerful. They have to be given it with a leash and held back anytime. Nature didn't ordain it so. The creation didn't ordain it so. The forces of the whole Prakriti is not so. Women are naturally have their own gifts and their own power Shakti. So equality is not the going forward. Empowerment is not the going forward. It is Saha complementary is the going forward where we shift. And this, we have unfortunately been put with a word called patriarchy in Hindu thought. The people who put up that word patriarchy don't understand what it is, because Hema, I'll show you now. Look at that.
There are actually 7 different perspectives in which you can look at a society as a whole, as a civilization as a whole. One is from the point of perspective of authority. So in the family unit, and this is authority in just within the family, who represents the family to the outside world. So patriarchal, if father wields the authority within the unit, mother wields it within the unit, matriarchy. But that is just one side of it. We talk about inheritance, about both traits and wealth. And that is where you have patrilineal, if everything. So there are some aspects where you look at it from a patrilineal perspective. For wealth, very interestingly, the Hindu civilization has held a very matrilineal view and practice. They have practiced matrilineal inheritance of women's wealth, and which was called a Stri Dhana. And unfortunately, I'm not sure how much time will permit us to share, but it is this aspect which kept the civilization sustained, prosperous, and
Happy.
continuously living for so long.
Millennia.
And where the women had their respect and they were therefore complementary. But it is this particular aspect which was broken down, because in the West, the women were not like we started off. It was always women behind the man. She couldn't hold anything. She had no power to hold her own wealth. So that is where, when the British came to India, they broke down the Hindu way of holding wealth, of gender balance. And that is where we find a whole lot of discrepancies.
Baggage, the colonial baggage is what it is. Let's finish this point first before we go to the next.
So 7 aspects then, from location, patrilocal, matrilocal, then the marriage and so on.
Who shifts to which place is patrilocal, matrilocal? Whether the girl shifts to the husband's place or husband shifts to the girl place. As you have in Hindi, you have a word called Garg Jamai.
So then affiliation. So all these, there are various things, but fundamentally the issue for us has been, this has been ignored. People have not seen the patrilineal, matrilineal difference, and they have mixed it with patriarchy. And unfortunately, they have snatched away all the wealth that was in the Stri women domain. And that is where we have lost our balance. And fundamentally for the Hindu civilization, this has crept in 2 ways. One, because of violence, which started about more than around 800 to 900 CE. And
because of onslaughts from the near West.
And that was because of violence, direct violence, resulting in the women being suppressed, protected, then suppressed, therefore the mindset becoming to keep women indoors. The second aspect, the second way women have been suppressed in the Hindu civilization now has been because of these indirect British legislations which influence the mindset of society due to peer pressure. It's a very involved thing. We have written in detail in our book called Breaking the Myths about society. These are the set of 4 books we've written on breaking the myths, and in About Society is where we have written a lot about what is caste versus Jati Varna, about how women were held in the Hindu civilization and so on. So here we have delved in detail about this Stri Dhana and how it has the legislations of the British caused it to morph into practice of dowry, sati, and various other ills of society?
So it was actually, there are two onslaughts, one physical for a few centuries on the women from the near west. The other was far west, where in the far west onslaught, it was not so physical as through law. That was what it was, because in Manusmriti and all others, it is the women holding wealth is not differentiated at all at the fundamental basis if you go. But whereas, see you should understand when Maine, who came to make law for India, he had a huge problem 250, 300 years back. What was it? In England, back home where he came from, women could not hold wealth. Whereas when it comes to this land, in a ship, faraway land, in the East Indies, as they called it then, because they had a West Indies also, they called it East Indies. So what did he see? Women holding all the wealth. Majority of the wealth of the land were held by women, and whom you call Dalits today, who are then called respectively Shudras. See, Dalit is a political term. So those were the two people holding the wealth of the land. So which was anathema to him. The aristocracy is not holding the wealth. The plebeians are holding the wealth. And the women are holding the wealth in the form of Stridhanam, which is their right, their hak, as you say in Urdu language, is the right to own it by lineage. That was what, and what did he do? He created a law called reversioners. By that law, he reverted the wealth back to the male kingdom over a century, which was held for millennia.
So I just saw that you also have a slide on Manusmriti, and the next panelist will be covering our Manusmriti in slight detail, 3-4 slides. So I hope you'll stay for some question answers at the end. If if the audience has questions, I know it's such a detailed topic, and I will just in the interest of time, I will just ask Aldrine ji to sort of come on board and explain to us some of that Manusmriti which you just mentioned, that it is actually very liberal. Aldrine ji, namaste. Aldrine ji says that Manusmriti is more liberal than the Bible. Aldrine ji, if I can give a small introduction to you about just about Aldrine ji, he's an ex-Christian. Aldrine ji is also he identifies himself as a Dalit, and he is a proud Hindu, and he has in fact taught me a lot of some of the texts that he knows so well in Sanskrit. So Aldrine ji, please take it away. Give us 2 minutes about your personal story, just 2 minutes, because we are short of time, and then please take us into Manusmriti.
Okay, namaste everyone. My name is Aldrine, and I come from a place in Karnataka called Kolegaon. Well, I was born in Bangalore, but I was raised in Kolegaon by my maternal grandparents. They were strong Christians, so I grew up as a Christian, and I was very strong, raised in a Christian family, so Orthodox, a Christian family. So I used to go in front of temples when I was 6-7 years old. And I used to preach that your gods have ears and eyes, but they cannot hear, neither see, so you should convert to Christianity. And I was always puzzled by the reactions of the priests, the Hindus. They never reacted violently or angrily or dismissively. They would smile and say, yes, yes, all gods are one, or oh, it is complicated. So I was always wondering, why is that? Why these people who are so not knowing anything are so much more confident than me, who has to go and tell them these things like you have to or else. So that just gave me a perspective even when I at that age. And as I grew up, I was not allowed to go to my father's side of the family, who were the Dalits. And once my mom moved away to America, that's when I was allowed to go to my father's side of the family. And when the first day that I went there, I was so happy because now I finally get to talk to them. I lived in a place called Christian Street in Kolegaon. You can Google it. There is a Christian Street in Kolegaon. There are 2 streets. Only Christians live on this street. So we were never allowed to interact or ask questions or say anything to others. So I went to Christian school, Christian friends, and all of that. So eventually I moved to Bangalore, and I went to first time to my father's side of the family. And I was so happy to go and talk to my aunt about the murtis and know a little bit more about it. When I went there, all of them were gone. And I said, what happened? Where are the murtis? I want to know more about it. And she said, well, I knew you were a strong Christian. I didn't want to offend you. So we put away the murtis so you're not offended. I was taken up by, my whole body just shook that day. And then I was like, wow, these people that we keep on saying are ignorant are so much more in tune with these things. And they were not educated. So she taught me as much as I can, eventually more with my family. And then I came to America and this interest grew, and I learned more and more about Hinduism. And now today I'm here talking about Manusmriti of all things. So yes.
I know, of all things, because I know a couple of my friends have told me that we have a library of books, why don't we just burn the Manusmriti if, it is the symbol of oppression. But then you educated me through all of the shlokas that you brought out about how it treats women. Maybe you want to talk about some of those shlokas, or at least tell us, maybe
I
2
go,
or 3.
Can I mean, it was a great starting from Dr. and Mrs. Hari, that it is amazing, and it's such a good way to start. And yes, Parinama and Saha is much more important than anything else. Our Sanskrit words are so much more meaningful than the everyday words that we use in English. So I think we should use this one. But I just want to invoke this inscription that is written 800 years ago on the temple in Belur, in Keshava temple in Belur. And I just want to go through this very quickly because it's very important that we acknowledge all Sanatana Dharma followers. So it says, Yam Shaivaha Sampasute Shivaiti Brahmaiti Vedantinaha Bauddhaha Buddhaiti Pramanapatavaha Kartaiti Nayaikaha Arhan Nishchita Jaina Shasana Prata Karmaiti Mimamsakaha Soyamvo Vidadhato Vanchitapalam Trailokinato Mivo. Which means it says, this is our Vaisala Vishnuvardhana, our king 800 years ago put this inscription on Channakeshava temple. Channakeshava is the beautiful Vishnu, that's what it means in Kannada. And it says, whoever the Vedantin in their heart adore under the name of Brahma, and Shaivites who under the name of Shiva, Buddhas under the name of Buddha, Bauddhas under the name of Buddha, and the Nayayikas skilled in Pramana under the name of Karta, whomever the Jain understood as Arhats, whomever Mimamsakas called as Karma, we call as Channakeshava. So let all worship the same one. So this is the way that we always lived. We always had this feeling of all of us, regardless of what we come through, this is where we are. And this is Sanatana Dharma. And the Sikh is not here, so Vaheguru Fateh Vaheguru the Khalsa, he would have added if Vaisareshwara existed today. So this is where our tradition comes from. Nobody has to tell us how living together means and how to respect each other. So this is the first place that we start with. So I just wanted to talk about this one. And in order to talk about the Manusmriti, why should we throw away? That is our library. Only the morons and ignorance burn and throw away books. Never throw away books. Every book will teach you something. So as we know, there are Smritis and Shrutis. Smritis are Kala Desha Patra, which means in the time, in the place you are, and the part that you're playing. And the Shrutis are Apaurusheya, we cannot touch it. That's the way it is, and that's what we are to follow. And Manu, Smriti, as it is called, is a Smriti. So we can change it, adapt it, not follow it. It doesn't matter.
And isn't it true that it is not written by a Brahmin, but by a king?
Manu, exactly. Manu is a Kshatriya, by the way. So this Brahmanical text was written by a Kshatriya. And he has some choice words to say about who is a Brahmana. So Brahman Jnanati Brahmana, right? So who has the Jnana of Brahman? Now he says, so what are the other 14 characters of Brahmana as well? So, but before we go there, I just wanted to talk about the time of Manusmriti as we accept it today because of the scholars who tell us how old it is. Let's say 2,300 years old. Let's talk about how it was when the Christianity was at the same time. In Christian Bible, there are 3 times women are mentioned, particularly women are mentioned. The first one is Esther in the Old Testament, where she was this beautiful woman who seduced people into killing so she can propagate Israelites, the religion. The second one is Mary, the virgin, whose only job was to carry the Son of God to the world. And the third time is the Mary of Magdalene, who was a prostitute that Jesus forgave, and she washed his feet with water. And those are the three women in Bible. And this is why it is important. And 80% of the Bible talks about killing people because it didn't believe in the other God. They believed in other God, and God of Bible did not like it. And 20% of it is this and that. It's very related to that as well. So, but let's see what our Shrutis, I mean, our Shastra said. In Raghuvamsha, Mahakavi Kalidas said, Vagartha viva sampraktyo, Vagartha pratipatye, Jagatat pitaro vande, Parvati parameshwaram. Just to add to what Dr. Hari and Mrs. Hari said, that Vagat, so the speech and the meaning is Shiva and Parvati. It's one and the other. This is Saha, right? Because in order for one to exist, the other have to exist. One without the other has no meaning. That's what it is. And it's so wonderful that you already said this. So I don't have to go through all of this. You explained all of this, and it was great. And this is amazingly important that we have to understand that it's not one coming plus one becoming two. This is one completion of this. With one, without one, there is no other. So this is very important. They both play the important role. They don't have to be the same, not equal. They have to be, to become a whole, to become Purnam. This is important, right? That's the hub, is important to be Purnam. This is the most important thing that I wanted to say. And
I think just to segue into the fact that in Bible, woman comes out of the Adam's rib.
Exactly. So that's what Manu.
In the Manusmriti, in the cosmogony of Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma, Brahman splits into two, right?
Purusha,
And
yes.
then, so there are two equal parts.
Correct.
So that is also an interesting.
Exactly. So these are the little thing I want to bring in comparison with the Christianity and Bible. From the beginning, there is no woman. Forget about the woman. Who woman? What woman? Why woman? And then God decides after creating Adam, he says he felt kind of depressed. So he needed a companion. Okay, I'm going to make another doll. And no, let me just pull a rib out of him. Why bother spend another doll on this other creature? And the only reason she was created is to give company to this guy. Just like, well, it's an afterthought. Oh, this woman, whatever, she's going to be in the side. So this is the problem. The problem, like just, I mean, I can't say any more than what they've already said, but this is the truth. The truth is that we don't see these things in these linear ways where you make these mathematical equations of this expansion of that which is, right? So this is the important aspect of it. And when you look at it, the whole Manusmriti is full of these things. Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devata, right? Wherever the woman is worshipped, the gods are happy. Ramante devata, right? And yatra dastuna pujyante sarvastatra phala kriya. Wherever they're not worshipped, regardless of what you do, your actions will not yield good results. Show me one other scripture of any other religion that says that. Puja, adore them, revere them, respect them. No, it doesn't say. In Paul, who is the guy who wrote most of the Bible's books, said women should be sitting in the back with the covering their head and wait until they get home to ask their husbands if they have any questions, what was said in the church. That's what he said. This was 2,000 years ago. While our Manu, the horrible Manu, was sitting there and going, Pujante, yatra striyam pujante, right? So and it's I just want to give a perspective of, it's not just about putting a woman in a pedestal, it's about everyday thing, right? So there's many of them. That there's one that says that if you're sitting in a car, make sure that you give place to a woman, a king, a learned one, or an old man, or somebody who's carrying heavy weight. This also shows this is an etiquette. This is a civilizational formalities that are brought by to show that we are civilized people. We understand the empathy is there, the compassion is there. This is how the society, the lived society that does that. And when I want to talk about some other stuff that
I think one of them you mentioned to me was that, for all of the rights and service.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I want to talk to you about one more of them that it says Bharya Bharata. Just a second. So yes, I mean, one of that it says she's a Sahadharmini. You cannot do, just like what they said, it is Sahadharmini. You have to share everything with her, including the rituals that you do, because she is half of you. She shares everything with you in your life. So you need to make sure that you involve her with that. So it's not like somebody sitting in there in the back and doing something else. It's, you have to do what you have to share with her what religiously you perform the actions, right? So I just want to find the one that and then about let me talk about the marriage and divorce. The marriage and divorce, it was not that the father told who she can or she cannot marry, who she can and she cannot divorce. This is about divorce. This I wanted to talk to you. So today we assume a woman who can divorce is on the stage of the Western civilization with all rights given
liberated.
to the woman. This is the horrible Manu telling you. Look at this stuff. This and look at the adesh, the thought behind this. This is says Trinavarsan Yudikshet Kumaryat Tumati Sati Urdhva tu Kala de Tasmad Videt Sahasam Pitam. And it says wait Trinavarsa. Wait for 3 years, and after that, if you want to marry whoever else you want to marry, go and marry them. Why 3 years wait? He's not saying, it's not like a imposed law. 3 years so that you can process emotionally, psychologically, whatever that is that happened with your divorce. What is the reason that you ended up in this place? Now, tomorrow, choose somebody carefully, be aware of it. And it takes that time, right? Because you have gone through life with this, and the divorce is not that easy to go through. And this is the thought process that Manu had when he talked about it, right? So there are thousands of those.
Yeah, there are thousands of those, because you went through this for 45 minutes on one of the webinars that I did. And really, I think we were all enthralled. Now,
yeah, and you don't have to, and that's why I'm saying,
in the interest of time, I want to cover two things.
Yes.
And because we have 2 more minutes for you.
Oh, sorry.
And I know this was a power-packed session, but this 2 minutes, I wanted to tell us, you talked about Dalit also once, how mercenaries were converted into Dalit, and how your family had that experience in your ancestors. And secondly,
I also want to tell you,
identify as a homosexual, as a gay man,
right.
And you have found similar liberal thought.
And this is my terrible Manu saying, right? My terrible, horrible Manu talking about me. He says, and it's interesting how it says, I'm going to take 2 more minutes, but that's Maitunam tu samasevya pumsi yoshitit dvijaha yoga nopsu divachaiva savasaha snanam chare. It says, Maitunam tu samasevya, like when you go and have sex, with man or a woman, and he's talking about a man having sex with a man or a woman, it doesn't matter where. It says goy, so which means the bullock cart. If you're having even sex in a bullock cart, this is the horrible Manu who is so backward talking about it. And he said, you know what he says? What is the punishment if you do that? You have sex with a man or a woman in a bullock cart? Go take shower, be clean. Make sure that you have some etiquette that you can go and be properly meet other people before you go and do something else, right? That is the punishment. There is another punishment. I don't have that one with me. It says if you have, it doesn't matter man, woman, have sex with a virgin, your finger will be cut off. And you know why? Usually in those days, women used to get married much earlier age. And when they say virgin, she's more likely underage woman, a girl, which means pedophilia will be punished. But a consensual sex is not going to be punished. And it says one more thing. It says, and what he doesn't talk about, there's no gay part in there, but I want to talk about what he says about Puman Pumso Dike Shukro, Stri Bhavatya Dike Striya. He says, I will, because I want to make it quick English. When male seed is predominant, this is, by the way, 3,000 years ago, it doesn't matter what you're talking about, the context you have to put it. 2,300 years ago, this man was saying, if there is a male, more hormone of female is, then female is born. More of the male is born. But if there is some imbalance, then the Tritiya Prakriti is born. Somebody like me, right? So that is the 2,300 years ago, when people didn't even have thinking of what it is. So there is no, he's not saying, well, kill them or they're bad for the society. There is no such thing I went through a lot of it. There is no such thing about it in Manu's thing. So that's why I want to make sure that we understand. Please go read your Shastras, learn. I don't know, I learned this Sanskrit by myself. Nobody taught me. I know Kannada. I went to the Kannada medium school. I am very good at Kannada. The only reason I passed high school is because I learned in Kannada. And the only reason I know this is I speak Kannada, and it takes me 10 times to read this Sanskrit words, and then I understand that way. So this is very important that we understand these things and learn about this thing. And then like the Dr. Hari was saying, there is no Dalit word that is ever in, you have Shudras in Manusmriti, but there is no Dalit. Dalit is added up. Just like the Thakas were added as criminal tribes, I found out to my cousins, we need to do this research. We cannot just keep on talking about it. We have to do this research. Through my cousin's friend, that most of our families were mercenaries for our kings. And what happened when the British came, before the British came, the Tipu Sultan, when the Adil Shah came, Vijaypur Adil Shah came, that's when this whole thing started. They started cutting down the mercenaries. And they all ended up, if you had money, you went to whatever Varga you wanted to, because Varna, like I say, Varna was not, and I wish I had more time, I would have told you that it says Shudra can become Brahman, Brahman can become Shudra, same with the Kshatriya and Vaishnava in Manusmriti. It says in Manusmriti, and it also says Brahmana by name is like an elephant made out of wood and a deer made out of skin. So let me tell you, all of this bull that you hear from these people.
I think, Aldrine, we'll have a longer session with you, at some point, because today I think the fact that you have done your own research on this topic, and if there is intersectionality is the sort of mantra du jour, like you really represent that. You bring so much. You have experienced some Muslim household, you have family, Christians, Hindu, and you chose this because you felt it is the most accepting.
No, I went through all of them, and I can put one at a time in verses in front of verses, and I can give you stand on the Shastra our ancestors have given. I'm telling you, you never have to shy away from one of them, not one of them. Just like you pick one, I will give you something else that will show you, what are you talking about? You're talking about 2,000 years ago. I can apply my Shastra today.
Aldrine ji, thank you so much for for taking us through this. And we have Madhu Kishwar ji. I want to spotlight her. I don't know why I'm not able to do that. If the tech team can help me, we need to spotlight Madhu Kishwar ji. I don't know what happened. I just saw her, but I couldn't spotlight her.
Madhuji, you're on mute.
Where is she? Can you see her?
She's here, but she's on mute.
Madhuji, namaste. So Madhuji, we just covered, can you hear us? I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, because the host had muted me. I couldn't do anything about it.
I guess, we have, Madhuji, we've had like at least 100 participants throughout the whole day. So it's been a pretty, and of course on live streams, we've had many participants. Aldrine ji, thank you for sharing. And also, I know in the paucity of time, we may not have question answer, time frame, but, we will hold more sessions like these because this topic is very, very intense. We probably should have broken it out into 3 separate sessions. But I just want to quickly introduce you, Madhu Kishwar ji. Madhu Kishwar ji is well known to all of us. You were the founder of Manushi, and Manushi, I guess all of us who have ever had any tryst with feminism in India have, always seen that book, whether through our cousins or parents, or, and the magazine has been around for a long time, and you have been part of sort of a pioneer in research and women's studies in India, and I just want to also mention that you wrote one paper that said why I do not call myself a feminist. And, I think that is actually the topic du jour, because that is what we explored a little while back with Dr. And Mrs. Hari. And they offered, some of the coloniality that impinged upon women's rights in India. And also Aldrine explained how Manusmriti is so much liberal, and he's an ex-Christian, and he says Manusmriti is more liberal than the Bible. So from you, I really want to get, your perspective on sacred feminine, obviously, and also your, your take on feminism, and anyway, all the issues that, that you can cover in these 20 minutes. Thank you so much, Madhuji, for coming and gracing our event.
Thank you for including me in this session. Many of the points have already been covered by previous speakers. Before I start with what I have to say, I would like to make an appeal to Aldrine Deepak ji. I agreed with everything you said, except one small semantic issue. You said your ancestors were mercenaries. No, Deepak ji, your ancestors were warriors. Yeah. They were part of royal armies. Yes. And I have studied this in small bits, and I'm going to be working more on this. Even, for example, Paswans. Recently, one of the BJP MLAs, senior leader from Bihar, came to meet me. He's from the Paswan family. And while his children, both studying in JNU, have become Ambedkarites and, all this castes, SC, oppression, etc., when I started talking to him about his ancestry, because I knew that Paswans and many other castes, jatis that during colonial rule were suppressed, oppressed, like most of our productive castes, artisanal castes, who they reduced to the status of OBCs, backward castes, most backward castes. These were not our terms. They destroyed the economy, they destroyed livelihoods, just as they did for your ancestors. Those who were the warrior races were disarmed, firstly. And since most of the Rajwadas were dismantled, disempowered, and the British took over. Therefore, these warrior castes became unemployed and their status got depressed. And then they said, oh, you're SCs and you are, scheduled caste or backward caste or most backward caste. So please never use the term mercenary, because you don't call people who work in the Indian Army today mercenaries. No, they do get a salary, but they're not mercenaries. And so also, not only that they were warriors at the service of Rajwadas, local royal families in different parts of the country. But another thing very important, and this is something that came out through the study done by Dharampalji, J.K. Bajaj and M.D. Srinivas, the Chingalpet study, which clearly showed that people from caste groups, which today are SC, were not only warriors in the employment of royal families, but more importantly, every village used to have its own chowkidars or police. Yeah. And those who were then the police caste or the martial caste, who therefore took on the job of protecting the village, were among the highest paid personnel of the village, because the village used to appoint its teachers, the village used to collect revenue from within, have teachers, gurus, artisans, the entire lot of service providers, including the village police. And today, those who were once the village guardians, the village police, the warriors in the service of many royal dynasties are today reduced to SC status. Yes. We really need to collect these Jati histories. It's very important. What happened to them during colonial rule or before that during Islamic rule? Because slavery was, or this kind of demeaning of any Jati in this manner, was alien to our culture. Anyway, so no mercenary shabd ever coming from you. My humble appeal to you.
No, sorry. But one quick thing, those people in Karnataka, those police that you just talked about, they're called Palyagaras.
Yes.
We know them. They're there, yes.
Yeah. So no need ever to use the term mercenary. Okay. Because then by that logic, the commissioner of police today of Delhi would be called a mercenary. No, we don't. We call him one of the most important officials of the government of India or Indian state. Anyway, many of you have already covered important issues, but even at the cost of repetition, I'll raise those issues in small bits again. Firstly, I believe that we have been in the defensive mode for too long. Those in the West who presume to lecture us, who arrogate to themselves
Join the meeting.
Who arrogate to themselves the right to tell us how to liberate ourselves, how to become assertive, empowered women. I think it's better that we teach them to look within, to understand where they are situated. They can't afford to forget, Deepakji, you already referred to it, but I'm going to very quickly run over it. The Christian civilization in the West was founded on the creation myth, which asserts that God created Eve, the mother of mankind, as a seductive temptress who was misguided by Satan appearing in the form of a serpent to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. So knowledge is forbidden and the fruit of the tree of knowledge is forbidden. That's the bottom line, the foundational myth of Christian civilization. She in turn seduced Adam through her wiles, leading to the downfall of the entire human race, with Adam and Eve being thrown out of the Garden of Eden in disgrace and condemned to suffer till redeemed by Jesus Christ. Now, it's a very sadistic myth, which is to say a newborn child is condemned to suffer, rot in hell, unless he or she accepts Christ. Why? Because the mother of mankind had caused the downfall of the entire human race. Now that's the role they give. But even before Eve turns into a destructive temptress, we are told that while God made Adam in his own image, he created Eve out of Adam's spare rib in order to provide him a playmate in the Garden of Eden. In other words, the feminine in the Christian imagination is not only made out of faltu haddi. Spare rib is the equivalent of faltu haddi, dispensable. And from that faltu haddi, dispensable bone, rib, and easily dispensable material of the male body, and she was created also as an afterthought to be Adam's plaything. Her existence has no intrinsic meaning or purpose. That's something we have to understand. Whereas I'll compare it to how we see the feminine in the Indic imagination. With such a negative role assigned to women by the Almighty God of the Christian world, it is no surprise that this world's historic gift to women is pornography, which treats women as subhuman sex objects, as use and discard pieces of flesh. The West has spread this disease globally and made it fashionable to treat women's bodies and sex appeal to sell everything from car tires to soaps and cold drinks. So you display the bodies, the naked, semi-naked bodies, nude bodies, so men can rule over them. And that's your whole advertising industry. And as I said, pornography. It's one of the ugliest manifestation of gender relations. And in such a situation, quest for equality, demanding that women be treated as human beings, is fair and just. So I can understand when Western feminists yell and scream about equality. But for us Hindu women, equality is a very poor thing, because an essential tenet of Indic faith traditions, pre-Vedic, Vedic, and post-Vedic, is that Shakti, the feminine energy, represents the primeval creative principle underlying the cosmos. She is the energizing force of all divinity, of every being, both animate and inanimate. Furthermore, different forms and manifestations of this universal creative energy are personified in a vast array of goddesses. Hariji had already talked about these goddesses and what they represent: Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga, Kali, and their countless regional avatars. I won't go into the details of that, but the most important thing is that she's both a creator and a vanquisher and destroyer of evil. And even devatas look to the great goddess to save them from destructive forces. And one important thing is that Hindu deities are gods and goddesses, devis and devatas, gods, goddesses, nahi kehna chahiye, are, they're not just distant heavenly figures. One constantly meets living incarnations of the divine in everyday life. It is very common, for example, for a talented daughter to be commended as a virtual Saraswati, or a fearless woman who battles wrongdoings in society to be treated as Durga incarnate. Thus, every village in India has its Gram Devis and Devatas. And what is more important is that it's the Devis that are feared. Devatas are revered, but nobody's afraid of Bhagwan Ram. Nobody's really afraid. Sakha hai Krishna Bhagwan to. Ram to Kripalu hai. But Devi maa jo, or goddesses bhi two kinds of goddesses. The consort goddesses and the non-consort goddesses. The consort goddesses are benign, like Ma Sita, Radha, Ma Parvati. But non-consort goddesses like Durga, Kali, and their regional variations. In every village, you will find local devis. They all have their legends surrounding Gram Devis tell us of ordinary women who felt outraged by the acts of some evildoer who either tried to ravish them or cause harm to society. Their response to such desecration is to rise in terrible fury and thereby grow in stature so that they are able to span both heaven and earth. So they restore order, they restore dharma, and even devatas appeal to them when they are unable to deal with evil running amok in society. The Hindu view of feminism is not just relegated to ancient history, but continues to have a living presence in our daily lives even today. And India is the only country where goddess worship, Devi puja, is a living tradition. There are more Devi temples in India than perhaps even temples designated to devatas. With this as the background, the task before women of Indic faith tradition is to halt the erosion of their position as creative leading force in society that came about during Islamic and British rule. I think that erosion has to be taken serious note of, and stop that erosion rather than demand mere equality as Western feminists do. For Western feminists, equality is a big thing, but for us, it's not adequate. अगर मेरा समाज मुझे देवी मान के आंखों पे चढ़ा के रखता है, तो मैं mere equality क्यों मांगू? It just doesn't seem enough to me. Also, feminism arose as a protest movement in Europe in mid and late 19th century against gross forms of discrimination. And those discriminations were part of their history. They were not part of our history. Till 19th century, 18th century, in Europe, they were burning women at the stakes. Women who were supposed to be scholars, or women who had on their own become healers or knowledgeable women. They were thousands, hundreds of thousands of women in Europe over 4-5 centuries were burnt at the stakes. And these are the people who try to come and civilize us and tell us that they have to guide us to the path of equality and women's empowerment. No, thank you. You handle your own problems, that's enough. You have very little to give to the rest of the world. From the very start of my public engagement through Manushi and even before, I've been averse to using the Western lens to viewing Indian reality. And that is why, even though Manushi was celebrated as the mother of Indian feminism, but I honestly could not adopt that label. And one of my most famous and controversial essays written way back in 1980s was Why I Do Not Call Myself a Feminist, where I explain it all. And Deepak ji, I also want to tell you, have a look at my article, From Manusmriti to Madhu Smriti. It explains how they have distorted it. Firstly, neither Manu nor any of our Shastras ever give commandments. And it's always made very clear that all dharma or codes of morality have to be time specific, they have to be culture specific, they have to be situation specific, and often even person specific. There are no universal commandments for all times to come. So it's not like Manusmriti was ever the equivalent of a Quran or a Bible. Why do you need to burn it? You just don't have to heed it if you don't like it. And those of us who find meaning in it will take what we like from it. So it's not as if Manu says, you will rot in hell if you don't obey me, or if you don't follow my dictates. And so it's basically because they don't want us to read our text. They don't even want us to read Ramayana and Mahabharata as stories. They would rather we read Bible, Milton, Chaucer. I mean, these were things that we were taught, baby stuff. And mind you, as a student of English literature, it used to really amaze me that the British started writing in 14th century when they start producing their first text. And they come here to a civilization where the Vedas, the Mahabharata and Ramayans written thousands of years ago, and no comparable text exists anywhere in the world. So they were naturally written with inferiority complex. And what do people with inferiority complex but big ambitions to rule do? They start manipulating you. First, they try to suppress you through the power of the gun. And then, of course, try to manipulate you into believing that you are not their equal. I mean, the Islamists burnt our libraries. Every conquest led to not only destruction of mandirs, but also burning of libraries and universities. Imagine coming from thousands of years, thousands of miles away to burn somebody's libraries, to break their places of worship. That's how bizarre this whole mindset has been, the Abrahamic mindset. And the Christians brought in Macaulayite policy, whereby they trained us to despise whatever little was left of our heritage. Now, as far as isms are concerned, whether it's feminism, Marxism, even Gandhiism, I would say, they arise out of the specific historical conditions of particular societies. By making them a guide to action in totally different situations and totally different societies produces very tragic results. We've seen the horrors produced by Marxism. Its dogma of class war morphed into Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, etc., gave rise to the most horrific massacres, atrocities, and tyranny wherever it went in its diverse avatars. And feminism, likewise, has become a very destructive ideology, tearing asunder the social fabric, first attacking women and family. I think we need to also remember, Islamists, how did they handle Hindu women? They couldn't obviously convince them that wearing burqa and following the Islamic way was so superior. So they just captured them, abducted them, and treated them and sold them as sex slaves through brute force. That's what they did. But they went after women. They would slaughter the men, capture women, and take them over as sex slaves. Then the British, likewise, the missionaries, when they came to India, they started, I don't know how many of you are aware, Zanana missions. They would go enter the house, they would send female missionaries to get hold of women at home, a young widow, or even ordinary housewives, and try to win over women, trying to convince them that they were oppressed. But they didn't succeed very much. Hardly any women fell for them, except for a handful like Pandita Ramabai, maybe, few during famines. They picked up poor families, their kids, and even women, and converted them. So rice-bag Christians, that's all that they could get, which is why in India, when British left, less than 2% of population had converted to Christianity. It was not a very attractive option, except for the poorest of the poor who could be bribed in times of adversity, not normal times. Now, then come the feminist missionaries. It's very important to understand that from mid-70s onwards, starting with the UN Declaration of Year of the Woman, Decade of Women, etc., they start sending feminists to countries like India in order to awaken the consciousness of Indian women and turn them into feminists. So they too, the agenda clearly was to open the way for conversions, because women in Hindu society have been the founding rocks of our civilization, the founding rocks of the family, like the Dhruv Tara, around whom the other stars move, but the Dhruv Tara stays firm. But once you wean away women, and turn them by turning them into Macaulay Putris, deracinating them, then they are ready as cannon fodder for feminists, and then ready as foot soldiers of Western civilization and open the way for conversions. And it is my personal experience that wherever feminist organizations set foot, whether in the slums of Delhi or any other city, or in villages, in no time they opened the way for planting of churches. That's been actually the very direct relationship. And it's the same thing then. First to be captured were women and turning them into feminists. Then, of course, the caste angle, Dalits as cannon fodder for Christianity and Islam. But even the categories imposed on by then. Now, the reason I think Hindus find it difficult to accept these isms is because the Abrahamic gods are jealous gods, commandment-giving gods. They allow you no freedom. You have to follow or be destroyed. And their modern-day isms and ideologies are loaded with the same biases. You are treated as a lower species. Look at what Marxists, communists have done wherever they acquired power. Communism or Marxism is yet another Abrahamic ideology, drawing heavily from Christianity. If you don't convert, you get slaughtered. And that's why Stalin, Lenin actually committed genocides within their own countries of their own people, all in the name of social justice. And feminism is not very different, even without being in power. Look at how feminists have become gatekeepers to all the academic institutions, to all power centers, and they do taken charge over our minds and the entire thinking process. Today, not today, but in the last 3-4 decades, the entire legislative process or social legislation in the name of empowering women or empowering Dalits or even environment legislation has been taken over by these foreign funded NGOs, leaders being feminists. So I think it's very important for us to understand that the fact that they can't stomach our dharmic worldview of seeing women as incarnation of Shakti, the divine power that moves the entire universe. They can't stomach it because Christianity is pathologically patriarchal and women-hating, misogynistic. That's evident even in the foundational myths of Christianity. So therefore, they have to, as they say, offense is the best form of defense. So make us self-hating. But I think it's important that they remember, these empowerment givers, that women in Europe began demanding equality as late as mid-19th century. That's when they began even writing. Women authors in 19th century used to often use male pseudonyms. But by contrast, ancient India produced countless women scholars, Smritikars. Even Vedic hymns have been composed by women. And Gargi, for example, daughter of sage Vachaknu, born around 7th century BC, is said to have written hymns, the Vedic hymns, and chose not to marry all her life. Think of how unmarried women or women without sexual partners are treated even today in the West. They're really social discards. If they chose, it's okay not to be married, but not to have sexual partners. To remain celibate is considered a disease, as though they'll send you to a psychiatrist. But those women in India and some of the leading women sages, for example, through the Bhakti movement, remained unmarried or walked out of marriages. and lived very unusual lives, roamed around freely without any male protection, and became leaders of wholesome moral leaders, spiritual leaders of whole society, rather than being burnt as witches on the stakes. And these are the people who want to teach us freedom. They are the ones who tell us that India is misogynist, Hindu dharma is misogynistic. Now, I'll conclude very briefly by saying this is not to deny that large number of women in India have come to occupy a subordinate position, that there are some gross forms of abuse taking place in India today, including feticide. Our very adverse sex ratio is a direct outcome of the unsafe conditions we lived under when Islamic invasions were a regular feature of our society. And what we need to understand is this, that whether it's seclusion of women or downgrading of their status, parda, ghungar, char diwari, or female feticide, these were distressed responses of a society under attack, under siege, in a situation when Islamic invaders were capturing women or even rulers, capturing women to be converted to sex slaves and sold in the markets of the Middle East, in the bazaars, paraded naked. In such a situation, it is no surprise that Hindu families were constrained to protect women by restricting their movements, by restricting their access or visibility in public life. Now, these are pathologies that have come to us under terribly stressful circumstances. Similarly, during British rule, disinheritance of women, destruction of matrilineal traditions, destruction of matriarchal family traditions, destruction of all forms of family structure, inheritance patterns that gave women more than equal rights. They tried to model society under in the image of the Victorian British society, where woman is a subservient, a dependent creature. So we cannot defend all that. We cannot defend restrictions on women.
But Madhuji, that is more like a social engineering. Right?
And we need to face them head on and fight them with our own tools, with our own intellectual weapons, not borrowed weapons from the West. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhuji. That was a fantastic, fantastic, talk, and very, very, it summed up everything. Whatever. I'm in the interest of time. I think we will. This is a topic that, like you said, it has been used as a weapon. Feminism has been used as a weapon for so long that we could talk about it from a decolonizing lens, from the re-indigenizing lens, for a long, long time. And hopefully we will carry on this conversation. But now I will have to hand over. Thank you so much to all my panelists for coming and enlightening us on this really, really important topic. So I will now hand over to Pramodji as the presiding